Today, we are joined by Radtke of Each to Their Own.
I'm the co-founder and lead strategist at Each to Their Own. We create brands and build communities for people-first businesses that have a social purpose.
What would your advice be to anybody who's currently running an established community of what they should be focusing on to keep their ship steady?
Well, it's got to come back to strategy, having that really good strategy underpinning the community, making sure that the values are really strong, that the member identity is really understood, that they know exactly who is part of that community, why they want to be there, and that the culture is really well defined.
Sharing food is just such a great method of building community. It's almost like the original method of building community, right?
It is.
It's a thing that we should all be going back to, because if you can get people at a table with a drink, with some food, conversation will flow. You just need to get the right people in the room.
You know, sometimes I think it's really easy to be afraid to make any changes, but I think it's important not to be afraid to iterate and to make kind of changes that are necessary. But a lot of the time, the success of that relies on your ability to listen to the people within the community.
Why don't you say hello, Rose? Hello, and welcome to the Digital Community Managers podcast, where we chat with community managers, champions, and founders about their experience leading and supporting digital communities. My name's Pete Heslop, and I lead the team at Steadfast Collective. We exist to craft digital applications that bring people together. We created the Digital Community podcast to be a bite-sized look into what it takes to start, grow, and scale a digital community. Today, we are joined by Rose Radtke of Each to Their Own.
Hey Pete, nice to see you. Thank you very much for having me on today. So I'm the co-founder and lead strategist at Each to Their Own, and we create brands and build communities for people-first businesses that have a social purpose. We're in a similar field to you, I think, but just slightly kind of on the other side. So our team is based in Brighton and Norwich, so we work kind of across the south and the east of England, and our purpose is to create and nurture really deep and long-lasting connections with our businesses' audiences.
Nice. And how did you fall into the world of community, Rose?
Well, I've always been a community lover. I'm really, really into community. I do stupid things like order loo rolls for like my entire street because I like people turning up on my doorstep and collecting them. It is who gives a crap, so it's good loo roll.
Nice. We use the same.
But yeah, and if you buy it in bulk, it's really cheap. It's great. So yeah, my co-founder Maddie and I met through a community online of like-minded women in business. So unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore, but it was a great community, and it just brought together all these really cool entrepreneurial women who had a kind of drive to make a difference. And we were in a networking event online. It was kind of just post-pandemic, I think. So yeah, it was very much still that kind of online only world. And we ended up in a breakout room together. And this is the first time I'd been to one of these kind of online events where you could actually go in a separate room with people and you kind of got matched and you had questions that would prompt you into interesting conversations. So we ended up in this breakout room together, and we just really hit it off. And we realized we had really kind of similar passion and drive, but very, very different skills. I'm all about strategy. Maddie's an amazing designer. And we also have got very different energies about us. I'm quite chaotic. I'm quite extroverted. Maddie's like super organized. She's very thoughtful and quiet. But we kind of bounce off each other really well. And I think most importantly, we really make each other laugh. So our kind of creative alliance. Exactly. You have to have joy in business, otherwise what's the point? So yeah, our creative alliance kind of made sense.
Nice. Yeah, so give me an example of what what you'd be doing at work. So you might be working with like a community which is just starting up or kind of already established, but what sort of work might you be doing with them from a kind of a strategy point of view?
So we've developed a sort of quite unique methodology recently for building communities. We've both, our background is in brand, so we've always, well, for like 10, 12 years now, I've been a brand strategist. And recently, with the kind of all the noise, I guess, it felt like marketing was just not really, like branding and marketing in the traditional sense, just wasn't really fit for purpose anymore. So we kind of started looking into this idea of community building, which is obviously really taking off now. I think there's a stat that says like 80% of startups are investing in community, which is really cool. So we started doing a lot of research into building communities and what it takes. And we developed this methodology that was designed to, well, is designed to help our clients increase loyalty and boost engagement in their brand and drive participation in their initiatives and campaigns and communities. So yeah, the process we'd normally go through is begins in brand strategy, which is kind of getting the values right and the positioning right, the vision, the mission, and then developing the identity of the brand. And then we'd start building the community behind it, if the brand needed to be
Hmm.
kind of worked on. Um, but then we'd start building the community identity. So that's, slightly different in that you're looking at the member identity and the method, the participation curve and the community culture and community engagement. And we'd also look to tell stories, so conduct interviews and write them in a really compelling way and think of how to kind of create campaigns and create content that's shareable and what else we could kind of do to engage people in that community. And then we might work with other people in our space, like yourself, to build platforms and kind of apply that whole brand and the community strategy to a digital space. So yeah, that's kind of what we do in a nutshell.
Wonderful. So we've got some questions for you, which is ideal because we're gonna withdraw all of your secrets on how you help your partners. So if you're a business looking to thinking about kind of a business or brand looking to start a community, or whether you're already established as a community, I think the next few questions are going to really help uh, give you inspiration on what Rose and her team would be kind of pointing you in the direction. So if we were to kick things off, um, Rose, what's your number one tip for like growing a community in terms of growth? Like you're trying to go from say 0 to 100 or 100 to 1,000 members. What would be your number one tip?
So my number one tip would be to start with the strategy, like the bones of the community. So because growth can only happen when that strategy at the heart of the community is really well thought out. People need to understand why that community exists,
Mm,
what its values are, how they fit into it. They want to be, I guess, people just want to know that the community is for them
mm,
and or for people like them and kind of know the rules and that their values are aligned in order to feel comfortable enough to participate. And of course, participation is the key to a thriving community. You don't just want to be feeding a community, you need to actually engage it and encourage people to give back and participate. So yeah, I guess once the strategy is in place, leading on from that, encouraging member participation is really key.
mm.
It's there's we call it the curve of participation. I'm sure you're very aware of that. And what happens? So that's all about what happens along the way from discovering the community to kind
Mm.
of giving back or becoming part of that inner circle. There's a lot that happens along the way, but mapping that out is really key to growth. so that you can kind of give people um, what they need
Mhm.
effectively in order for them to give back.
Yeah, we're currently doing a fairly large research piece to produce kind of a, a framework slash white paper around that kind of community member life cycle. So from first becoming aware of the community to becoming like somebody on the board or somebody who's like governing, like that. Those are big steps that people will take, and some people will sit in different points along the life cycle, and that's fine. But it's really interesting that we chat to lots of communities. They don't often think about how do we get people to the next step. Because if you get people to move from being just, lurkers to contributing or contributing to, say, moderating, they're the people who are really going to be championing what you're doing. And ultimately, they're your fans. And they're the ones that will go out and kind of almost be your marketeers for you. They're the ones that are going to help you grow organically. Um, and I love that strategy piece, and I guess that works really well hand in hand with what you do from a branding point of view as well. Because there's one thing just having a really well written document which says all these wonderful things, but you've then got to communicate that to the outside world, right?
Yes, exactly. And what you're saying about referrals, like growth through referrals, that's the beauty, isn't it, of community
Mm,
marketing? Like that's the beauty of this whole model is that you've got a way of growing that is actually incredibly organic and authentic, really, because people love what you're doing and they want to bring other people into it and share that with other people. So, yeah, it's amazing.
it's good. And also, you'll find that when you have people who are referred into a community, they will be much stickier in hanging around because they're probably the right people rather than just finding you online thinking you'll fix some sort of problem in their life and then vanish again. People like to bring like-minded folk into the inner circle, don't they? So
Yeah, and also there's that so welcoming people into a community is very important in order to make them feel confident enough to participate. Um, but if they're referred, hopefully that person that refers them then introduces them and
yeah.
kind of helps them to integrate. So that's kind of gets everything off on the right foot, which is great.
Absolutely. Okay, so you've just had a an email come through your inbox, Rose, and they go, look, we've got a community of X number of people. Things are going fairly well, but we're really just struggling with engagement. What's your Do you have a silver bullet? Do you have like a first thing we're going to check if that's on fire? What's the thing you're going to point at first?
Well, I guess it really depends. Like you'd want to do a kind of audit
Mm,
firstly to see what's going on within the community. You'd want to see how everything is set up and whether the bones are all there. But if we kind of get to the point where everything's clearly, set up right, the strategy's there, I'd look to storytelling. So people love stories. We're completely hardwired to instinctively understand them because they're necessary to our survival. Like they've been what we've thrived on and evolved on. Um, so storytelling is one of the most powerful ways that community can engage its audiences. Um, but it's very, very important for those stories that are told in a community setting to be very authentic.
mm,
And there's a real art, I find, to drawing them out of people. So kind of interviewing them, but in quite an informal way, in a very chatty
mm,
way, without a script. Normally, you might have some pointers, but really, you want to have a conversation, and it needs to be quite emotive, and you want to sort of draw what you can out of them and then take that output take the what your findings are from that interview or that conversation and then write them up in a really engaging way, tell that story very engagingly. But there are lots of ways then that story can be told. So it could be in a simple blog post or some kind of like collateral. Um, it could be in a short film. It could be as a campaign. So a really good example, actually, I went to, I was on a course recently, a kind of cohort of pioneers, they're called, run by a local co-working space. And one of the speakers there was from Olio. And it's a, do you know Olio?
The food
It's like a
sharing
sort of
platform.
food sharing. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And she gave a really good example of how Olio had engaged not actually its audiences, more the press
Mm,
through storytelling, and that obviously helped with engagement. Um, but they kind of sent baskets of quite weird and wonderful food items
mm,
that were being given away to journalists, along with stories of where they'd come from.
it's good.
And yeah, and then as well as getting the word out and driving people to sign up and participate, that press coverage also helped to kind of normalize food sharing because it was
Yeah,
quite stigmatized. Um,
good.
so yeah, it can come with some really good side effects. And also, Olio, that food sharing economy is great because it reduces loneliness. There are so many benefits to it. It's
Mm.
enabling neighbours to meet on the doorstep and, getting people to meet in real life, which is so, so important.
Yeah, for sure. And I just find generally in when you're meeting with friends or trying to meet new people through business, sharing food is just like such a great method of building community. Like it is like it's almost like the original method of building community, right? It is
It is.
it's a thing that we should all be going back to, because if you can get people at a table with a drink with some food, conversation will flow. You just need to get the right people in the room. And I always just think, if you're struggling to engage your members to maybe get feedback from them, or you want to kind of maybe reward some of your most engaged members, just get them in a room and feed them. Like it's amazing what flows out after that. It's a great way of kind of just starting conversation.
That is so true. Yeah, absolutely. And so many of I'm sure pretty much every society is organized around sharing food. It's how people to come together. For us in the UK, a lot of us, it's we'll come together at Christmas or
Hmm.
Passover or Easter or Thanksgiving, or it's like all of these rituals throughout the year that kind of mark the progression of the year, but also bring us together, are what holds a lot of us, our lives together, really.
It's good.
Brings us all back. Yeah.
And food's great. So what looking ahead for the next 12 months, um, what do you see as kind of the biggest challenges on your roadmap?
Well, at the moment, I am kind of driving the business, running the show on my own, with the help of my very lovely studio coordinator, Philly. My business partner, Maddie, has just had a baby, which is
Congratulations.
amazing. He's yeah, little baby boy. First little new generation Etoling. So, yeah, we're very pleased. But yeah, I'm kind of just trying to find my way at the
Mm,
moment. Um, on my own, which is fine. I'm kind of getting used to it already, and things are still moving. The wheels are turning. So yeah, I'm very pleased for her, and I'm kind of quite excited to see like how I can push things on,
mm,
and what I can build for her when she comes back. Um, so we've got a lovely kind of network of designers, and strategists and writers that we draw on. So yeah, building kind of our community is going to be really
mm.
important, and bringing everyone together and making sure everyone feels really united. Um, beyond that, beyond a challenge, what I'm looking forward to. I don't even know if you asked me that. What I'm looking
No,
forward
yeah,
to.
carry on. Yeah, that's the next question. So go for it. What are you looking forward to most in the next 12 months?
Well, I'm very geeky about community these days, so I'm really looking forward to continuing my kind of studies on the subject.
Mm.
I'm pretty into David Spinks, CMX Academy.
Yep.
Um, CMX, yeah. So I'm wanting to become a certified community professional with
Mm.
CMX Academy. Um, and yeah, I'd like to do the community MBA that David Spinks is
Nice.
leading. Um, I loved The Business of Belonging. If you read his book, The Business of Belonging,
I
it's
have not.
pretty cool.
Okay.
Okay,
Add
well,
it
it's
to my
very
wish list.
interesting. It's useful. So yeah, I kind of want to build on that and formalize that kind of training, I guess.
Final question. If you were a community manager right now, managing a community, a digital community, there's going to be a lot of change over the next 12 months. There's going to be almost a lot of competition popping up, I feel. There's going to be a lot of people trying to draw everyone's attention because community is that word at the moment. What would your advice be to anybody who's currently running an established community of what they should be focusing on to keep their ship steady for the next 12 months?
Hmm. Well, it's got to come back to strategy. It's got to come
Hmm.
back to having that really good kind of strategy underpinning the community, making sure that the values are really strong, that um, the member identity is really kind of understood. Like
Yeah.
people that they know exactly who is part of that community, why they want to be there,
Yeah.
um, and that the culture is really well defined. And that it doesn't mean that it doesn't have to be flexible, but
Mm.
having that strategy underpinning the community just makes sure that it's really, really strong, and it makes everything easier. It makes running everything so much easier, and even just things like having a code of conduct, or
Mhm.
a really kind of strong code of conduct, so that everyone knows what um what is expected of them, how to behave in that community,
Yeah.
and having a kind of a really strong welcome series, making sure that people feel integrated as
Mm.
soon as they kind of join. And also understanding why people leave. And it's not always a bad thing. People do leave communities, of course they do. It's
Mm.
very normal. But kind of being able to, if possible, keep in contact, understand what those, you know, why they're moving on, um, and kind of act on that feedback, I think is really important as well.
It's good. I've been part of communities where the person kind of running the show has moved on, and there was a little bit of uncertainty with then to kind of who was in charge and who was steering the foundations. And I think at my thoughts around that is you almost can't over communicate, even if your communication is we're working on building out this, we're working on this, whatever you're doing, you almost can't over communicate. Just bring clarity. And it's amazing how often you do need to remind your team as someone running a business, but also your community of this is our vision, this is our mission, this is our code of conduct. We do it all the time. We do it quarterly at Steadfast because it's not that we've got a really forgetful team. It's just it's good to get people fired up and bring to the front of mind. This is why we're here. This is what we're here to do. And I think as community managers, they almost sometimes need to remember, yeah, there's lots of daily things to be doing, but every so often, just slow down and then re-explain to everybody, like, what is this whole group for? Like, why is there 1,000 of you here? Why are we meeting for events? All those kind of things, because that brings loads of clarity. And especially if you are bringing in like either cohorts of people or people kind of coming in dribs and drabs, it kind of helps bring everyone up to the same level.
Yep, exactly. Also, don't be afraid to iterate. Sometimes I think it's really easy to be afraid to make any changes.
Mm.
Um, but I think it's important not to be afraid to iterate and to make kind of changes that are necessary. But a lot of the time, the success of that relies on your ability to listen to the people within the community. So
Mm,
engaging people, doing those interviews, listening to them, asking sort of good questions and really understanding what they're saying and exploring that, and then analyzing it and acting on that feedback, and changing things up a bit.
mm.
You don't have to do it yourself. You can get agencies or whoever to do it, but it's a really important thing to do. It's just so, yeah, so important to actually take stock and review and
Yeah.
not end up going stale.
There's a reason why community managers are often the best generalists, because there's so many hats they can wear to kind of keep things moving along. Um, Rose, thank you for being such a wonderful guest. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, telling us about each their own. If people want to kind of follow your story, what you're up to, what the business is up to, where's the best place to find out more?
So our website is eachtotheir.co, not .co.uk, just .co. And they can also follow us on LinkedIn, and they can connect with me on LinkedIn as well. So my name on LinkedIn is Rose Radtke, which is Radtke. It's a very difficult surname.
We'll put it in the show notes. But thank you for being a guest. Really appreciate you being on the podcast, and excited to watch Etio grow and become this kind of force of nature in community world.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Pete. It's been lovely chatting to you.
Have a great day.